Today, I'm going to share some words of reflection, and then Grace will also share some reflection, and then we'll open it up to Q&R. And after that, we'll meditate together, probably around 10:15 until 11 a.m. California time. We'll break for lunch for 2 hours, and I want to encourage everybody at home to practice, and we'll be in silence today here. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that work for you, Grace? Since you don't have to be here, it's fine, right? Anyway, and then at 1 o'clock, we'll get together and meditate again, and I'll offer some guidance, guided meditation. And then at 1:45, Grace is going to lead Qigong for about 45 minutes. And after that, there'll be at 2:30 some more Q&R, and we'll close at 3. So just the rundown. I'll mention what we're.
No, the phone. I'll babysit for the gardeners. Sorry.
Okay. So sorry about that. Yeah, so our theme today is not self or non-self. I don't think it matters much at all which way we express it. It's really, taking the self out of it. And I thought I'd share a story that I heard recently. This was an interview that I heard with a very devout Catholic gentleman. And he talked about growing up in this big Catholic family. He was the 11th of 11 children, so he's the youngest. And he said that his mother really taught them to reflect whenever they lost something precious to them, to try to look at the situation the way God would see it. And he said that, for him, he says it's stepping back. The way he said it is you click back from it. And he said, and you click a little bit above it. And that's how you view this circumstance of losing something precious to you. And he even said it's like taking the self out of it. And of course, this reminds me very much of what we talk about so often in using mindfulness. That mindfulness is our opportunity to step back from whatever it is we're experiencing, whatever dukkha there is, to be able to see not just this experience that feels like it's filling the entire screen of our awareness, but to step back and start getting some space around it. Mindfulness and then clear comprehension. And I feel like this idea of how would God see this situation, it's from my Buddhist perspective, it's about the sampajanya, the clear comprehension, seeing the big picture. And in this interview, it was talked about as the light of eternity, to kind of like see from that really long perspective how this incident fits into the larger scheme of things. Sometimes you can see this when the Buddha would talk to people who were in grief, had a serious loss, like a mother losing a child. And also, there's a poem in the Therigatha, where the Bhikkhuni Patachara talked to a group of nuns, and it sounded like they all, or many of them, had lost children, which I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in a situation where the infant mortality rate is so high. But when she talked to them, it was this idea of the long view, thinking about many lifetimes. She said, if you had known where that child had been before they came to you, and you knew where they were going after they die in this lifetime, you wouldn't cry. It's kind of an interesting thought. And of course, when we lose someone precious to something, some person, some maybe health, maybe wealth, maybe some other thing that really strikes us, there's going to be grief, there's going to be feeling. When we say to take the self out of it, it's not like we're trying to get rid of this sense of self that we have. It's not like we're going to act like that's not happening, but it's how do we take the position of viewing this experience, or seeing this experience, observing, witnessing this experience that's not us immersed in it and caught up in it. And it's interesting to me that this would come, through the channel of this person raised in the Catholic tradition. And the really potent part of this interview was that when this person was 10 years old, his father and two of his brothers were killed in a plane crash. It's a regular commercial flight, like maybe everybody takes sometimes. And suddenly, three of these people in his family of 13 in total are gone. And he said that at that time, when he was 10, and it was right at the time when it was this crash happened in early September, and two of his brothers had come home for a break, college break, so they were in the house, and a bunch of other siblings. He said there were 10 of them total, 10 people in the house, and then within a couple of months, his brothers went back to college. Another brother went off to law school. A sister had just gotten married, and this crash had happened. And he said it went from 10 people in the house with a lot of noise to just him and his mom. And at that point, he said he really started to pay attention to his mom. And he said between them, they had this kind of joke throughout the rest of her life, that was the point where he started raising her. And this happens, he said for him as a child, whatever happens to you as a child, you think it's just the norm because you don't have more context. And so, he's paying a lot of attention to her and learning from her. He said she really taught him how to not be bitter. There wasn't this kind of like anger with God or that kind of thing. In fact, the two of them went to Mass every day and to communion. And so I'm thinking about this from the Buddhist perspective again, and I'm thinking, yeah, where do we go for refuge? That stepping back and trying to see our situation from that long view, that broader perspective, that enlightened perspective. That's one part. So taking refuge in the enlightened mind, Buddha, awakened, and then the truth. They went to church they heard a sermon every day, and we do a lot the same thing, listening to the Dhamma talks, reading the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma. And then by going to church every day, there's also the community, the Sangha, the support, and the more enlightened that Sangha is, the more uplifted we are. Because when we're in thinking about this relative to this sense of self that we have, that's built in when we take on a human birth, what does it mean to step out of that? And like I said, it's not about getting rid of it. But at some point, we recognize that there's something bigger than this or beyond this conventional reality, this world and the way it operates. And, in part, because we're these, if we just think of things from the perspective of our individual self, just a small being in this massive universe, incredibly vulnerable to all kinds of things that can happen. And so sometimes, even though all religions are really pointing at this thing that's beyond this bigger thing, this, call it ultimate reality, call it God, call it by whatever name we want to try, it's still this experience of something beyond this conventional world. And so some people take the position that religion is just something that we create in order to feel better, to feel more safe, to feel less vulnerable. But actually, that's the perspective of someone who hasn't had any experience with what's beyond this yet. But I think most of us, maybe everyone here, because you're here, you already have the sense, one way or another, observing things, you've had some brush with what's beyond this material world, some sense of that, maybe something really deeply profound. Or maybe it's just a hint. But once we get that sense that it's not that religion makes up this kind of idea of some kind of safety or salvation, but it's actually seeing what's true, experiencing it for ourselves, that brings religion in. Every religion, the true religion, as Ajahn Gunha says, true religion all has the same aim. Whatever we add around that aim, culturally and with language or whatever, that's useful in order to try to kind of share this, understand it, support each other. And that's different depending on the culture. It's not like all religions are the same, but that same pointing at the same thing, really. So this ability to step back, to see with more clarity, with more wisdom, you can really get the sense of how the self, this me and mine, gets filtered out, and how this boy at 10 years old was prepared by his mother with the smaller things that you lose that feel precious to us. And he was asked in the interview, do you feel like that approach of this, try to see it the way God would see it, did that help you? And he said, I can't say that at 10 years old that really consciously helped me, but you're living in that kind of environment where you're infused with this idea. So of course it did help at some level. And for us studying the Dhamma, one of the things that we regularly chant is all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. And Ajahn Sumedho said that when he first came to the monastery and they're chanting this almost every day, and he said at first it's like, wow, that's really sad. Like, I don't want all that is mine, beloved and pleasing to be separated from me. I want all that is mine, beloved and pleasing to be mine forever. Right? So I encountered that chant when I was probably about 50 years old, or no, maybe it was a little before that, late 40s. My first reaction to it was, yeah, that's how it is. Like we experience that, all of the changing and and instead of it being sad, it's a relief to acknowledge it. And that when, the Buddha's words trying to help us prepare and understand and be ready for the things that happen in life. So for us, being prepared by the Dhamma, then when things happen, it's not, why did this happen to me? It's, oh, anything that can happen to anybody can happen to me. It's my turn, you might say. There was a question last night about, well, if we're looking at things from above, does it mean we look at the tragedy in other people's lives from above? And I'm like, no, this is looking at our dukkha, really. It's not about putting ourselves above someone else. I mean, you see this sometimes where people think, yeah, that person, they have all these problems. That's their karma. They must have done something wrong, as if we're immune. But the true way of holding all that is, I could get my turn anytime. This is just the process of being a human being. And to be able to recognize that we can use this knowledge, this understanding, this wisdom, this truth as the encouragement to look deeper into what's beyond this conventional reality. That there is Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, that there is this awakening, that this awakened mind is our true nature, and that we have this opportunity to come back to it. And that is not the sense of self. That is not little me with my things and my people and my limited perspective. And it's not something so much that we have to strive to attain, that's going to take a long time, that's so different and all far away or out there. It's more like we relax, let go of our desires, of our aversions, of our requirements, of our expectations, and rest into that true nature. It's bigger than this small sense of self. And there's relief and joy. And now I'm going to say something I might get in trouble for. Because I think this is something we really all need to discover for ourselves. We have this ongoing debate. Is it really love? Yeah, I think so.
Is what really is the ultimate I think all that's left is love.
All that's left is love.
That could be,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
All that's left is love. I don't know.
Never mind.
Emptiness,
Emptiness, yes.
which may not exclude love, it's just the bigger
It's
envelope.
empty. It's empty of self.
Yeah.
It's empty of a permanent, substantial self. And what is it that's empty of that? It's everything in this conditioned realm. But when we talk about the unconditioned, there's no separation, there's no distinction, there's no more right, wrong, white, black. Even the views and opinions of what's right and wrong change. And of course, there's the wholesome and the unwholesome that we pay attention to, close attention to, because we don't want to act in ways that bring barriers to our awakening or harm to ourselves or others. But at the ultimate level, there's peace, tranquility, love. That's what I think. I'm going to stop there. Grace,
All right.
please go ahead.
Of course. I think it's the favorite advice of highly respected teachers to say, look at your suffering, look at your sense of self. And I wonder, out of everybody here today, who is brave enough to admit that at least at some point in your practice, that advice was confusing, annoying, or even just at times infuriating, which I know for me, it absolutely was. It makes a lot of sense to me now, but I remember in 2020, at the height of the first wave of the pandemic, I had a video call with the Ayyas, and I said, please help. I am so anxious. I don't know what to do with it. And Ayya Santussikā gave me a lot of really great advice. And after the call, I went to go talk to my partner, and I said, okay, Ayya said to try this, 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 and to watch my anxiety with compassion. What do you think that means? Kyle's like, I'm not sure. What do you think it means? And I'm like, I don't know, but I heard that cardio really helps with anxiety, so I'm going to try that. And sure, working out was in some way a skillful way to work with it because it worked and it was non-harming. But was it the most skillful way to work with it? If I got injured, which I did eventually, I couldn't use that technique anymore and the anxiety just came flooding back. So at least I was starting to investigate, what does this mean? What does it mean to look at my suffering, look at my sense of self? And a while after that, it started to make even more sense to me. This thing happened where I was having an argument with my partner, Kyle. And in the middle of the argument, Kyle said to me, I just feel contempt from you sometimes when we get in these difficult conversations. Will you please investigate where that's coming from? And, sometimes I say I love Kyle more than I love myself, not because I put Kyle's needs above my own, but because in instances like this, I will say, yes, I will investigate this. I will look at the painful parts of myself because I love them. I would not do it for anybody else, not for my parents, not for my best friends, not for myself, but I'll do it for Kyle. So I went into meditation and I just really wanted to know, where is this coming from? This part of my mind that will hurt the person I love the most in the world? Where is this contempt coming from? Because I know I don't believe it. I don't want to hurt Kyle, but still it's coming out of my mind. It's coming out of my mouth. And I went really deep into meditation, and I saw that part of my mind. In my mind, it appeared as this like really ugly baby with this enlarged head. It was covered in just sticky slime. And it was that part of my mind that was so scared and was using contempt as a way to feel safe, was using contempt as this technique that this mind had learned from early conditioning and all the lifetimes before, this technique of pushing someone else down so that this part of my mind can feel safe. And I just saw this part of my mind crying out to me, and it was just a part of my mind that was wanting so badly to be loved and to be held. So in that meditation, I did. It was the ugliest part of my mind, the part that I hated the most. It was most ashamed to see. And I got to experience what it was like to really see that suffering, see that sense of self, the part that I was most afraid to see, and to hold it so tenderly. So I got to practice with that for a while. Started to understand my suffering better and wasn't afraid to see my suffering anymore. Then a while later, more time passed, and I got to experience that seeing of my suffering even more, which these opportunities come all the time. We never really have to wait long for one of these lessons, do we? But this thing happened where I was really, really angry with a coworker and friend. And I'm pretty scary when I'm angry, right? This is another reason why I often name Kyle as my greatest teacher in my life, more than the Arahants in Thailand even, because Kyle is willing to like talk to me when I'm angry, when everybody else has run away because they want to keep their head on their shoulders. But but I was so angry that morning, and I was really just spinning in this spiral of all the ways I knew at the time to deal with anger, which was to place blame on everybody else, to try and convince myself that I was blameless, which is never really the case. You know, in any conflict, I always believe that both sides at least own 1% of what happened. But the whole morning, I was so angry, I was fuming, and Kyle just dared to say a couple times in the morning, Grace, just feel your anger. Grace, just feel your anger. And at first, I didn't understand. And the first few times, I was like, no. But then as Kyle kept daring to tell me to just feel my anger, to just watch my suffering, I was more and more willing to entertain the notion. And then sometime later in the morning, I admitted to Kyle, I don't want to, it hurts too much. And Kyle said, you can do it. You're strong. And I think in part because my beloved Kyle believed in me so much and really allowed for that space, I believed Kyle when I didn't even believe in myself. And the next wave of anger that I felt, I really just sat with it and I held it. And it was so painful and so hot. And it felt like I was holding a red hot coal in my hands. But there was no other way for that cold to cool. And I just held it. And it hurt so bad, but soon it didn't hurt anymore. And it blew my mind. And I started to realize that there was no feeling that could not be held in this way. And actually, it was the most direct way to process these difficult, unpleasant feelings. And I got to practice with that so richly also. And in the months following that, I went through some of the worst, most painful times in my life. oceans of grief. You know, at the time, all I wanted to do was to have a biological baby. And I'm not going to talk about this very much. So if this is a sensitive topic for you, I'm just going to mention it in passing. But I experienced pregnancy loss, and I had never been that bereft in my life. But just feeling the grief and facing it directly, also that grief passed. And that instance, that event does not hurt me anymore. And I am only grateful now for everything I've learned from what happened. Should I pause for a question? James, what's up?
Well, a few minutes ago, I had some, things I wanted to follow up with the Ayas, but right now, I just feel like standing up and cheering. I mean, what I'm really identifying with is what a powerful psychoanalytic tool the Dhamma is. And it's not even so much the analytic, but it's, I mean, what you're talking about is stepping back, and able to hold the human dilemma, the karmic bundle, and treat it as, with compassion, but as an object of love, like, your child or something. And, I never got anything out of therapy, but, what you're talking about in terms of your Dhamma experience in the path is therapeutic. I mean, it is the therapy, and it's the real work. And it's just really beautiful to hear you render it so clearly. And so thank you. And thank you to Kyle.
Yes. James, I receive your love and I mirror it right back to you 100-fold. Yeah. I've personally also really benefited from therapists, talk therapy and trauma therapy. I have one of my best friends is a therapist also. And I remember one time in one of these sessions with Ayya Santussikā, we talked about how Nibbana could be seen as like ultimate mental health, could be one of the ways that we think about it. And I brought this back to my best friend who's a therapist, and she was like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. And I've always wondered why what was the connection between my interest in therapy and my interest in Dhamma? And that's the perfect click.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we open to Q&R now, or I could go on? Ayya, what do you think?
I think we've got more time. Why don't you go ahead and just hold your questions a little bit longer, and then we'll open it up.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Another reason why it's so lovely to hear from James and to see so many faces from our Thailand pilgrimage is because I feel like the next major breakthrough I made in seeing my sense of self in a cool and friendly way actually happened in Thailand. And I remember when we were learning from Ajahn Gaha, Lampar Gaha, and he was talking about the relationship between sense of self and suffering. So the more sense of self someone has, the more they suffer. Something about the way that he was talking about it made it really click to me that my suffering is my teacher. It's not something to hide from if I want to get less and less sense of self, if I want to reach Nibbana. And whenever the suffering arises in me, not to look at it like this, between the cracks of my fingers, not to look at it like this, but that I can really bow to my suffering and open my arms to my suffering as a really wise friend. Because wherever the suffering happens, it's like I don't watch golf, but I've been watching that golf show on Apple TV lately. So it's like that, the flag with the little thing that people use to identify where the hole is on the green. So wherever my suffering arises, it's a little flag being like, hey, here's something to learn from. Here's a little sense of self that you can work on next and learn to love next. Learn to love and let go of next. I think often in Dhamma circles, I'll hear a teacher say, practice is love or practice is letting go. And to me, they are both incomplete. Practice is loving and letting go, almost like it's all one word. Practice is loving and letting go.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I started seeing my suffering as my smartest friend. And anytime that it arose, I would just kind of go into a meditative state and open my heart to it and really ask it, what are you teaching me right now? What do I need to learn? What is my best next step in my path to Nibbana? And sure enough, oh my gosh, the suffering was a good teacher. And the suffering would arise throughout the day. You know, like I didn't have to wait until my partner was on lunch break to talk to them. I didn't have to wait for a Saturday morning session to talk to the Ayyas. The suffering, you know, it followed me around. And another way I started to think about it was that the suffering, the unpleasant, the painful, racking heat of suffering was just the bitter taste of the medicine I most needed in that moment. And yeah, I just started to see suffering in more and more of a friendly way. I became less and less afraid of it. I started to face it head on with my hands met, head on with my arms open. And there was a lot of progress. I'll just say that. And then there came another moment when I realized that maybe the last lesson that any instance of suffering has to teach us is that it is not suffering at all. It is just an unpleasant feeling. I remember there was one day, the day that I realized this was I was dealing with someone at work who is very tricky to deal with. And I had to deal with this person on like 4 or 5 projects throughout the whole workday. And I was plagued by irritation. And I tried every trick. I went for a brisk walk, you know, going back to my COVID technique. I tried to meet it as a friend. I tried to practice gratitude for this person as my teacher. I tried every single trick. And still, the irritation was right there in the center of my mind. I remember I just basically collapsed into a chair, stared out the window at the beautiful tree outside, and I said, you know what? I guess I'm just going to be irritated. And as soon as I just accepted that feeling, it went away. And I was like, all right, you know what? I think the meat of my practice for a while is just going to be accepting these feelings as quickly as I can. And another way to think about this is I was realizing that as my suffering arose in my mind, there was this bracing sensation, this tensing in my body before I really unfolded and opened and softened to it. In a similar way to when I'm learning a new language, even if I'm kind of good at it, if someone starts talking to me in that language and I'm not prepared for it, I go and I kind of tense before my mind relaxes and I just start trying to understand the words that they're saying. And I've heard that for people who become just fluent in that language, it's not that they understand every idiom, every turn of phrase, but really it's that when that feeling goes away, that often people start saying that they are fluent in that language. And I thought, you know what? I want to become fluent in suffering. I don't want that gasp feeling anymore. And I just want to meet it with my arms open and not brief bracing before I remember to soften. And that was definitely very fruitful practice as well. To the point where on many days and in a lot of times, but not all the time, I do feel like the mind can just be as neutral and as open as a tabletop. And sometimes maybe, irritation gets placed on the tabletop and then it just goes away. Sometimes I'm dancing with my partner in the living room and love and fun and delight shows up on the tabletop and then it just goes away. Sometimes I work with someone else who's very annoying and tricky and it just goes away. And it can also just be like that. That's all I have for now, I think.
Beautiful. Thank you, Grace. Okay, so let's open it up for questions. Yes, Paula?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Grace. It really touched me a lot, and I'm going to give that a try. Of course, it's not anything we haven't heard before, but your own personal experience makes it more real. And I wondered if you could share, because I heard this story a while ago of when you had a problem with your boss or something, and you decided to be dirt. Do you remember that story? I would love it if you could say that firsthand, that story.
Sure.
It's kind of been used by me several times, but I don't know the whole.
Yeah, I would love to share. All right. So I've had several difficult bosses in my life. I'm lucky to have a wonderful boss who I think of as a very good friend now. But yeah, very difficult bosses in the past. I think of them as great teachers to me, It's like Kyle, Lampargata, Ayya Santussikā, horrible boss, horrible boss. All right, but the story goes, I was working at this place where I had this manager who, okay, we don't have to go into the specifics. This person was very difficult, and our relationship just became more and more contentious. At the time, I thought she's the manager, it's her responsibility to be mature, which is not very mature of me. But that's why I just let it be contentious, and it just built and built and built. So it got to the point where she called this meeting. I was sure I was going to get fired. I knew she was starting to build a case against me, or at least making paperwork. So I requested that HR be there, and then she requested that her boss be there. So it was going to be this big showdown, and it was going to happen on a Monday. I was extremely nervous about this. And even though every fiber of my being just wanted out of that job and didn't want to deal with it anymore, Kyle saved the day again. And we were talking privately, and Kyle said, we can't afford for you to not have a job right now. Will you please promise me you'll do your absolute best to keep this job? And I said, for you, Kyle, yes. And then I was like, damn it, now I have to do my best to keep this job. So I called the Ayyas and I said, what do I do? How do I practice with this? And Ayya Santussikā said, why don't you try reading the simile of the saw, which is most famous for the simile that the Buddha gives in it, from which it earns its name, which says basically, these bandits come and saw you limb from limb, and you have with them anything less than a mind of loving kindness, and you are not my disciple, which is not word for word, but you get the gist. So that actually was not the most useful part of that sutta for me. And what really sang to me was when the Buddha says, again, not word for word, but he says to his disciples, be like the dirt. If you try and dig up all the dirt, does that work? The disciples go, no. And the Buddha says, if you pee and poo and spit on the dirt, if you call it names, etc., does the dirt get bothered by it? And disciples go, well, no. And that blew my mind wide open, because previously I had always just thought, you know what, I just have to be as equanimous as people are expected to be. Or maybe on my good days, I just have to be as equanimous as the most equanimous person I know. But when I read that sutta, I realized, oh no, I gotta be as equanimous as the dirt. And I spent the whole weekend just working with that concept. I meditated, visualizing a patch of just sandy, dusty, icky dirt, like not even the fun stuff that you get in the forest or the really fertile stuff that has compost in it, but like the really icky dirt. And I imagined myself as the dirt. I really tried to feel what it would be like to be the dirt. And when I showed up to the meeting on Monday with HR and all of the angry people, I was really just able to be so level as the dirt, no matter what accusations were being made against me, uh, no matter what names were being called of me, I was just dirt. And I was able to respond like truly, sincerely, with kindness and with a spirit of collaboration. And even in the meeting, my manager was like, this is the first time I've felt a collaborative spirit from you. And I was like, well, yeah, let's start now then. And we were able to go on to really build our relationship again. I realized that it's not smart to wait for someone else to be mature, and that it's actually better for everyone to be as mature as they can in every moment, especially in heated situations. And I started every meeting with my manager with intentionally saying words of appreciation, built in a lot of mechanisms to help us communicate better. And by the time that I left, with her blessing, we exchanged gifts, not having decided to do so beforehand. And I hugged her and I said, I love you. And she said, I love you too. And if I crossed the street and saw her at any point, I would rush forward and give her a hug.
Beautiful. Thank you. It was nice to hear that story in more detail. Thank you. Any other questions? Comments?
Something in the chat, maybe.
Okay. Oops. Marilyn asks, what punishments of the gods are not gifts? Tolkien. So I don't think that well, of course, from the Dhamma perspective, there's no God giving out punishments. And I guess, I completely concur with what you've been saying, Grace, and to recognize that our dukkha is our teacher is so important. It's like Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mosquito, when Ajahn Sumedho got malaria, he had such high fevers, and he couldn't practice, and he was really frustrated because he couldn't get into samadhi. And Ajahn Chah said, malaria is your teacher, malaria is your practice. And it's to see that ultimately there are no punishments. Ultimately, I think no rewards either, in a sense. It's just the way it is that we have these opportunities to resolve this misunderstanding and misapprehension and all the past conditioning, so that there is peace and love truly apparent to us in the situations we're in. What do you think, Grace?
I agree. +1.
Anything else? Anything more? Either of you would like to say? Or
I have
Grace?
one quick thought
Yeah.
is I've been naming Kyle so much in my speaking just because Kyle is who they are to me, and because they've been my greatest inspiration to practice and my greatest motivation. And I really encourage, if someone doesn't have a Kyle in their life, or someone who doesn't quite make them promise to hold on to jobs that they hate and make you want to say yes and then mean it. Also, the person who is, we can also love your enlightened self, love yourself, love your happiness, love your peace so much too, in a way that drives practice.
Yeah. I love how much you do talk about Kyle, Grace, because we have some couples in our communities who they are each other's Kyle and Grace, like they support each other in their practice, and they're so much better together than they would be by themselves. And when we see that, we get so excited. We're so happy. Most of you know, Phil and Val are together, and they met at KBV, and it's just like their practice is, I think, really grown exponentially since they've gotten together, because they can talk about Dhamma all the time and meditate together and listen to stuff, and spend time with a real Kalyanamita who's pushing you in the right ways, because you don't grow without the push, with the kind of like, please, crappy job and money now, necessary, or whatever, like you have problems in the relationship, and then it's like, yeah, can you look at the contempt, please, can you, and you would do it for the other person, where it wouldn't be in your face in the same way if you're by yourself, you wouldn't have to deal with it, and then you don't grow. So working through your issues with someone like that, it's just like, whoa,
Yeah.
So it's not like monastics say, don't become couples, just everybody ordain and get in line, it's like, no, sometimes you should Grace and Kyle this, or Phil and Val this, it's really supportive, and maybe not even possible in this lifetime without it to make that kind of progress. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just telling Kyle a couple nights ago that there have been 3 questions in my life that don't necessarily come from the suttas, and I didn't hear from any teacher. I have held these questions in my life since maybe early adulthood, maybe before that. But these 3 questions that have driven my practice so much. One of them is, how can I die with only peace in my heart? Another is, what kind of happiness sustains and does not diminish? And the third question, this one arose when I met Kyle. At least it became more solidified. But how can I love you truly, selflessly, and unconditionally? How can I love you in the way that I want to be loved, in the way that I think you deserve to be loved?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I want to say that it doesn't always happen as a romantic relationship or a coupling relationship. It can happen in the holy life with a Kalyanamita. It can happen with, like we have in the community, groups of maybe 2 friends or 3 friends who are really close, who talk about Dhamma like really regularly. And right now, hearing this, if you're feeling alone or isolated, it can be even more painful to hear this. But I want to encourage you to recognize that it is beneficial to show up and join in with things with the community. And then, gradually we might gravitate towards other people where that friendship can develop. And you can kind of, you don't even have to like have any kind of commitment. You can just try it, try connecting with someone and sharing together and then see how that goes. I think when we really are, I love your questions, Grace. Those are really beautiful questions. I think we should write them down and put them on the website. But to really have that question of how can I love others in this way, this unconditional way, in this way that I would like to be loved, in this way that's really beneficial for them, even if it isn't going in the direction of my own preferences, that I really want what's best for you. And that's our go-to attitude towards others. Not even just this special person or these special people, but that's what develops for everyone. And it that can be misconstrued as like I just become a doormat, but that's not how it is. It's also that same love for ourselves. So without the sense of self getting in the way, I don't know if I like putting it like that, but the more we have that sense of loving, the less this individual sense of self with its selfish desires is prominent. It's fading. It's fading. And it's fading in this beautiful context of the development, the growing of this unconditional love, this selflessness. So it's not like you've missed that part. or it's not like we have to act like that's not there or push it aside or any of those things like you were talking about, but to love that part also. And then to recognize that this becomes our natural state of loving. Yeah.
Loving and letting go. One word.
Like
Loving and letting go.
Loving and letting go. A compound in English, just like those big long poly compounds. Loving and letting go.
I think my favorite part is still the like, don't look at the dukkha. That's the best part.
Full on.
Yeah.
Just okay.
With hands met, with arms open. And before we go to James, I did want to say that I felt like with the loving and letting go thing, the more I loved and the more I could open my heart with unconditional love, then the more the letting go became obvious. And also the more letting go I practiced, the more and more easy it was to love. They're like the two legs on which we walk this path.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And James? Thank you, Shane. Go ahead, James.
It usually takes me a minute to get started. So this is really just another way of coloring, what we've been talking about. But my interpretation of my own experience is that certainly with my wife and others, that when you meet them or you come to know them, you intuitively feel the virtuous and beautiful qualities of their heart and who they are, and that it's like within your own being, and it's like I don't want to make it so personal. It's like some awareness rejoices in that kind of contact. And so, your heart becomes a vehicle for all this love that pours through and inspiration to celebrate and support and, help this person just become who they are every day. And you're not asking anything. You're just excited to see who they'll become today. And as we were talking about this, so as you're experiencing this kind of inspiration, personally, I don't experience it as me loving them. I experience it as them inspiring love pouring through me, and
Mhm.
and that to me is really liberating because when you know, uh, my experience in the Sangha is there's so many people that have this beautiful heart quality that I have that same experience of just loving them immediately. And being so excited about who they're becoming and who they will become, uh, and learning, and so it's like there's no self in it, except as we deal with our residual framework of self. But um, it's that the source and the power and the manifestation of the love is coming through you. Um, so in that, you don't need to have a partner to do that. In fact, you become everybody's Kalyanamita. It's
Yeah.
in its ultimate, in its ultimate manifestation. I'm still working on that part. Anyway.
That reminds me of something. I manage some people at work, and whenever I start managing someone new, sorry, whenever I start managing someone new, in my first meeting with them, I always say, in 5 years, we probably neither of us will be working for this company anymore. So what do you want to be next? What do you want to work toward, and how can I support you in that way? And really setting this intention of, I really want you to be happy as a person first and foremost. Our work is important.
Yeah.
It's why we're here, and it's secondary. And even with Kyle, we expressed to each other, like, if you really think you will be happier not with me, then I wish for you to be that and do that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, James. Caredwin?
I feel like my mind is kind of blown right now. There are so many things that you said, Grace, that I just really, really helped me so much. I can't even I don't feel like I can even put words to it, but I'm going to try. I have read The Simile of the Saw so many times, and I never really deeply thought about being the dirt, and that just helped me. That helped me so much. I feel like it just opened my mind to another way of looking at things. I think the getting your limbs sawed off is such a um, visceral, kind of image that it takes all the attention. But I think being like the dirt actually is, I don't know, it kind of makes more sense to me, and I can feel it. And I really related to the thing you said about waiting for the other person to be mature. Like, well, she's the supervisor, so she should be the one. Well, I have this relationship with my mom where I wanted her to be the mature one. And at a certain point, I just had to take responsibility to be mature myself. And my I was crying when you were talking about that feeling from this was a job you hated interacting with this person, to you were exchanging gifts and telling each other you loved each other. And I feel like that has been the transformation with my mom. Like 10 years ago, I said to a therapist, I don't care about working on the relationship with my mom. I don't care about that relationship. And I went from that to now, like, I'm helping my mom, like we're moving across the world, and it's like my primary thing is like, where will it be best for my mom? Where can she have the, medical care that she needs? And it might not be my preference to live in a bigger city, but if that's what works for my mom, then that's what we'll do. And really, it was from just and what James said, being everyone's Kalyanamita. It's just like, yes, like that's what I need to do, is to be, I don't know, to be the grown up, and um, to be love to other people, rather than looking for that in other people. And also just want to say about the loneliness. Gosh, I used to be so lonely. I just felt lonely all the time. And in the past 5 years, coming to Dhamma circles, I have so many Kalyanamitas and so many groups that I go to, and the showing up consistently and participating and opening the camera, even when I don't look good or I don't feel good, like has just made an enormous difference. And then when I don't show up, like people email me and say, "Are you okay?" You know, like that is true friendship, right? It's like, and I have people that will text and say, "Are you coming to the thing, to the Dhamma group or whatever?" And I just love the way that we care for one another. It just really is huge. And so I appreciate this so much. And like me being the grown up in my relationship with my mom, like our relationship is so incredibly transformed. Um, we're just kind to each other so much of the time, and it used to be such a like this kind of relationship all the time, and now it's sweet and gentle, and if I put love in, I get love back. It's like if I'm resisting and angry, like that's what I get back. So like it just makes such a huge difference. So you just really spoke to my heart today, Grace. I just like, wow, wow. Thank you so much. And thank you, Paula, for asking for that story to be repeated, because I didn't really ever hear the whole thing. And so that was really fantastic to hear it. Thank you.
Edwin, I feel so much mudita for you right now that my heart aches. So thank you also. And I also want to say, like, if there are people who, there are people still who I do not choose to spend my time and energy with. Um, People who, after exchanges with them, like Sila, very development stages, okay? When I am in a room with them, I do my best to open my heart with love and kindness and compassion. And if I don't have to be in a room with them, I am not.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. I think it's always good to remember that sometimes boundaries, sometimes distance, sometimes, you know, not walking down the road where the bandits are going to come and saw off your legs and arms is a really good idea. Just there's something about being really clear about what's wholesome and what's unwholesome, being really clear about what's loving for ourselves and others and what isn't. Okay, I think we should take some time to meditate. Does that sound okay, Grace?
Yes, of course.
And Ayya, anything else to say? Okay. All right. So we'll start this period of silence. And I know that when we break in about half an hour for lunch, there probably will be some exchange of how to get lunch on the table and get set up and all of that. But noble silence is such a valuable practice to still the mind and calm ourselves and ask the questions that are needed, and not with a feeling of some kind of trying to find the right word, not like there's some kind of punishment or negativity around silence, but enjoying silence, really finding the beauty in it and the respect when we practice noble silence together, the respect for everyone's quiet, their calm. So without that opportunity to be quiet, we may not be able to so easily take in the Dhamma and let it blossom within us. So we'll sit in silence for a while. And when the bell rings, we'll take that break online until 1 o'clock. And we'll take care of the meal here and then come back for more meditation at 1 p.m. So we'll see you all back at 1 o'clock, hopefully, or whoever can make it. And we're planning to have Qigong at 1:45. Thank you all very much.